Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Need to Nerd podcast. I am your host, Spencer, and I am joined by my co-host, a man whose love for droids can only be met by his love for YT cruisers.
Dude, you missed it. It's actually my love for Zoids.
Your love for Zoids. Would you rather have a Zoid or a Millennium Falcon?
Well, the truth is that I would rather have a Millennium Falcon because I actually haven't played any Zoids games, and that's Spencer's cup of tea, actually.
Yeah, I would also rather have a Millennium Falcon for what it's... I mean, the Zoid's cool. I don't know. Now I'm having...
Spaceship's great. There's just...
Spaceship goes to space.
Also, I mean, Spaceship sometimes doesn't go to space as far as a problem.
We are going to be talking about going to space this week, and for a lot of people,
Landing the spaceship.
It might have been their first time going to space. We're going to be talking about Star Wars: The Original Trilogy. We kind of mixed up these episodes, right? We could have done this instead of Dr. Stone last week, for May the 4th, but I actually took May the 4th off from podcasting. Kind of enjoyed my day instead. So today, Wes and I will be, using the month of May to celebrate. Just hold Star Wars month. Let's go. But
before we need a reason.
Before we get too far into this one,
celebrate Star Wars.
Exactly. West, I changed the segment name for you. I don't know if you noticed that in our show notes. See, when you bully somebody enough, eventually you get what you want. So this week's Nerd Fact of the Week, West. The Nerd Fact of the Week, West. It's this week's Nerd Fact. The one you get this week.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. The brand new listeners are probably like, what is going on? But yeah, we're changing the name of the segment to the week so that Wes stops making the same joke every week. And
put Spencer's anxiety on an IV drip, everyone.
Yeah.
It made it real easy.
Exactly. But, did you know that the TIE Fighter engine sound... I actually did not know this before doing this, setting down to do this episode. The TIE Fighter engine sound actually is from an elephant. It combines the sound of an elephant bellowing and a car driving on wet pavement. And then they altered that sound. I'm not going to lie. I would not have expected that. But the TIE Fighter sound is iconic.
It's so good. It's higher pitched than that. It's screamier than that. But it adds up if you think about it. We're going to talk a lot this week about old sound design, old costume design, old effects design, because I think it's so important to our material today. But yes, before you could just mix anything, you had to go and actually make the sound. It was great.
Well, it's funny. The famous lion roar at the beginning of is it MGM? What is the name of the company that had that lion?
I couldn't care less.
Either way, it wasn't a lion. There's actually a tiger roaring that they put the sound of the tiger roaring over the line because tiger roars sound ferocious and lion roars are like so that they kind of sound more like Wookiees. So, yeah.
Tiger roars are definitely the better roars. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, definitely they are. You know what is even better than tiger roars though is our Discord, man. You got to check it out. Drop in there, go into general, put a recording of your tiger roar. I want to hear it. And while you're there, if you like what's going on in there, I did try to be a little bit more active this week. Still kind of waving my way back in there, West, but unfortunately, my wife needed me, so we couldn't play Valheim. But we were going to get a Valheim game going the other night. I plan on doing some Smash games in the Discord here in the near future. We've always got the Magic the Gathering stuff going on in there, stuff like that. I'm excited to talk about our Star Wars tabletop RPG that we're going to be starting up this month, and kind of just talking about my first RPG experience. I'm going to record videos about it, post them in the Discord, just ask people's opinions on what do you do in an RPG to make sure that you're not... I think I have this problem, Wes. You might agree with this, that I have this problem of leading and directing in a lot of ways, that I don't want to have overtake the narrative of this game.
Oh, you're going to have a wildly difficult time discovering your character instead of living your character as you expected them to be for 9 months now, for 30 years now. Not quite sure how far back this goes, but
sure.
Yeah, it's a whole skill that you got to build. It's definitely something that doesn't come at first, and it's actually both entirely intuitive and really hard. It's one of those weird things.
Yeah. So if you want to discuss tabletop RPGs, Magic the Gathering, anime, man, we get that anime channel is probably still the most active channel. For some reasons, everybody's always talking in there. Yeah, check out the Discord.
There are days where it's Popper.
Yeah, some days it's
MTG Popper.
MTG Popper, yeah. Which they're supposed to be just scheduling a tournament for that. I'll have to look into that. Patreon.com/HeZagameMedia is the place you can go to support the show directly. And there's a Magic the Gathering content creator. His name is The Professor. He once did this video. He said, "Can I have $1?" And his $1 tier on his Patreon was, guilt-free ad block. And I thought that was really funny. And the reason that it's really funny is because if you donated $1, if you watched every piece of content we ever put out, forever, and you watched through every single ad we ever put out, I still don't know that you could make up the $1. The $1 that donating on Patreon would help with. That's how powerful that $1 is compared to anything that sponsors would give us, anything that YouTube ads would give us, anything that ads on Anchor would give us, stuff like that. That type of stuff is really helpful. And we also want feedback. Like if you are in the Discord and you want to give us feedback on here's some things I would love to see out of the Patreon, some Patreon benefits I've left from the stuff, drop into the Discord, let us know. We are very open to that kind of stuff. So, but Wes, this isn't about our Patreon. This is a new type of review, because we said earlier on the show that we weren't always just going to be doing individual movies or season by season, that sometimes we'd shake things up on the type of way we would review things. And we're going to do that with this time, because we're going to talk about Star Wars, the original trilogy as a whole. We're not talking about A New Hope. We're not talking about Empire Strikes Back individually. We're not talking about Return of the Jedi individually. We're actually taking the entire trilogy and breaking down our thoughts on the trilogy as a whole. And the reason, Wes, that I wanted to do it this way was because I think that they're each their own stories to be told. I think that all three trilogies have a story to tell. Some do it better than others. And I wanted to break down, my favorite trilogies. It's like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, right? I don't know that if we ever did Lord of the Rings, we would do those individually. I would just do the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy.
I'm not even sure I have more to review on the Lord of the Rings trilogy than spending an hour on the single scene where Legolas flips up onto a horse. I can just go deep on that one. I don't have to talk about anything else in the entire series.
But I want to, as we cover this, and then eventually we'll cover, the prequels and then the sequels. I just want listeners, as you're listening, to think about these as a whole. And I want to hype it up really quick. Wes, you're a small child. For you, I don't know how old you were, but for me, I'm
you literally don't have to explain this experience to me. I was there.
You're at your uncle's. You're going to the movies. You're in this space where there's this excitement, and for a lot of people, mine and Wes' age, there's excitement from the people around you, and you're not exactly sure why there's so much excitement, but it breathes into the air. And that's what the Star Wars experience has become for a lot of people, is you find out that your friend has never seen Star Wars, and you're like, oh my gosh, I would love to watch you experience that. I would love to be a part of that for you. And there's a reason for that, and it's because for so many people, it's a great experience. It's a very different take on the fantasy genre. And if you're a listener right now and you haven't watched it, pause this. Let us know, because I want to talk to you. And I do. I want to talk to you.
If you haven't watched Star Wars before, come to the principal's office and we'll watch it
No,
together.
no, not. I don't want to talk to you like I'm not that kind of Star Wars fan. Like, there's people that just, it's never interested them. But if you've just been putting it off and it's something you want to see, I want to talk to you before you do. I would love to make it worth your time to watch Star Wars. So, but I think that for so many people it is kind of a pillar of their nerddom. We did our need to nerd Dragon Ball, right? We did our need to nerd video games. And we could definitely, I think, at least for me, I don't know for you, Wes, but I could definitely do our need to nerd Star Wars. It wouldn't, and I think a lot of people could.
You have basically every episode of this show the entire time we've been recording this show.
Then my need to nerd Star Wars.
Yes.
So that's my hype it up. It's
just like.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that that Need to Nerd is your Need to Nerd Star Wars and my Need to Nerd Pokemon, and everything else is just in context based on our knowledge of those things.
Sure. I put this in the show notes. I don't know if we need to be spoiler free for media this old. Like, if you haven't seen the Star Wars trilogy,
could you imagine?
You should, and you somehow haven't had it spoiled for you. Maybe this.
Hey, guess what, listener who hasn't watched Star Wars before?
We're gonna talk
what?
spoilers, and you shouldn't just.
Santa Claus isn't real.
What? I didn't know that.
And the exposition at the beginning of every movie is a lie.
What is happening?
Don't trust what you read, folks.
So let's talk about our first times watching this film. This will have spoilers. You have been warned. I don't know why you need the warning at this point, but I want to talk about the first time we watched these movies. For
Snape
me,
killed Dumbledore.
Why? Why are you doing that?
Because spoilers. I don't know. I'm on one.
I watched them for the first time with my cousin Caleb. I had to have been like 6 years old, and I don't know. We'll get into this later in the episode, but I don't know what the time frame was between when I watched A New Hope and Empire. But I definitely watched them sometime before I watched Return. And I know that especially because I remember thinking Luke and Leia were going to get married. And I told my parents that.
How'd your parents handle not spoiling that for you,
Spencer? I don't think they spoiled it. I don't think they did. But also, like, my Uncle Ron was a much bigger Star Wars fan. He's my mom's twin and Caleb's dad than, like, my family was. So for me, I went to my cousin's house. He put on Star Wars for both of us. We both watched it together for the first time, and I was completely captivated. I had to be in kindergarten, maybe, kindergarten, and I remember just thinking it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And that's impressive because, like, I watched movies like Silverado in the first night as a small child. I was talking to my mom about this the other day, but she let me watch some movies as a young kid. Things I would never let Maxwell watch.
Yeah, Silverado's an interesting one because I think that it's...
this is actually how it came up. She's like, I can't believe it let you watch Silverado as a kid. I put that on for the grandkids, and that 13 people die in the first, 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that, basically it's just violence. And most of the rest of it can go over a kid's head, but man, there's a lot of shooting in that movie.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was used to the violence before I saw this movie. So I think that the story is what captivated me, but being on the Death Star, the Stormtroopers were super scary, stuff like that. But I vividly remember that first time watching A New Hope at my uncle's house. I actually remember the room. They don't have the house anymore. But I remember the room. I remember the couch. I remember the whole thing.
Yeah. That's, in many ways similar to my experience. But, I don't know, mine had just enough difference. The first being that, actually I have a current colleague, ex person who was my teacher and like after school counselor, tells me this story all the time about when I went to see the first Harry Potter movie as like a 6-year-old. And, you know, during the movie, like halfway through the movie, I like lean over and whisper and be like, who's Harry? Like halfway through the movie, I did not track film very well when I was a small child. I just had no idea what was going on. And by and large, that was the case when coming to Star Wars as well, because I had seen Attack of the Clones and only Attack of the Clones at like a friend's birthday party at Hollywood Connection, just the oldest of polls, right when they'd come out. That friend was a huge Star Wars nerd. Even then, like we were turning 7. That's how young I am in the world. The lower we get in numbers, the more our difference in age stands out. But so I walked away from like that experience with like, I thought I knew what Star Wars was, right? Like I had that much going for me. And so when my dad sat me down to watch A New Hope, my first question is like, is Anakin the New Hope? Which is extremely awkward if you know the whole story.
Well, it's actually funny. I don't actually know that it was called A New Hope the first time that I watched it, for what it's worth.
Star Wars.
Because he just had the original Star Wars on cassette. So I watched it.
You do mean VHS, right?
VHS, sorry. And so I watched it.
Star Wars.
Yeah, audio. Ooh, yeah, let's go. That's the best kind of Star Wars.
I actually think it'd be really good. It's probably not a bad radio play.
It's really not. But the thing is like it was definitely not called Episode 4 the first time I watched it. Like it was Star Wars Empire Strikes Back Return of the Jedi. But anyway, I digress. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
But, you know, of course, similar experience after that point, right? I went with a head full of no idea what was going on, and by the end of it I was just like, oh my god. And this was still like, this wasn't my first watch, but I remember going back and like specifically timing, like, you know, using the timer on the VHS, how long the attack on Yavin 4 took, right? Like 5 minutes till we destroy the planet or whatever. And then it's like a half an hour of film, right? Like, you know, this is before I learned that it's never that long in the movie. It's either much less or much longer. It's never exactly the time they say it is. But man, I was hooked. I was, you know, like trying to drain every detail I possibly could out of it. And I think it took me a long time before I saw the rest of the trilogy. I think that like, my dad's always been a huge fan of Empire, so I don't think he took very long to show me that, but I think it was like a while until we had our hands on, a copy of Empire Strikes, or Return of the Jedi for me to watch.
I think for what it's worth that when I was watching the original trilogy, because I'd like to loop back onto this part of the conversation, it is entirely possible that I watched those two in the same sleepover weekend with my cousin, and then the next sleepover weekend we watched Return.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember being jealous of my brother the next year. I mean, because I remember being jealous of my brother for getting to go to Return of the Jedi re-release in theaters. They did the special editions, and then they were in theaters, and I didn't get to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember being really jealous of my older brother for getting to go, which means that I had to have watched all of them by then.
Yeah.
Or maybe I hadn't seen it, and they showed it to me at that time. I'm not sure. Either way, I either hadn't seen it or I saw it because he went.
Yeah.
Which would have, you know, aging myself here would have put me around 8 years old when I saw Return.
We'll talk more about this at a later time, but the Star Wars movie that was the hardest for me to get my hands on to watch as a kid for some reason was Phantom Menace. It was a long time after I'd seen all of the other Star Wars movies that were out before I watched Phantom Menace. Like,
that's so crazy.
Straight up, like I'm pretty sure Revenge of the Sith was out well before I watched Phantom Menace.
That's a fun one that'll be fun to talk about on that episode. Okay, let's talk about high level impressions. I'm gonna go first.
Sure.
I think the biggest things that it take from the original trilogy for me and just like high level impressions are: one, you have this hero's journey of Luke. Both, I mean, there's so much that happens in this. It's crazy to think how much happens in these three films and how well paced they are. I think that is like a huge benefit to the original trilogy, is they are paced really, really, really well. There is a caveat to that, is like, they have the stuff that happens on the Death Star, and then they immediately go attack the Death Star, and it's like kind of this shock when you watch it. You're like, what just happened? But like, it makes sense, right? I assume they put the Death Star into hyperspace to travel to Yavin 4 to destroy Yavin 4 after they destroyed Alderaan. I'm not sure.
Well, they were tracking.
Right. So I know that. I'm just saying, like, it just escalates so quickly.
Yeah.
It's the only one where I'm like, the pacing on this is a little awkward right at this moment.
Empire Strikes Back is just the chef's kiss of pacing, right? We get like a little bit of build up. We get a huge opening like encounter, right, with the battle on Hoth. And then it's just like all for the rest of the movie is like a slow pace straight towards the dramatic finale.
Yeah. And pacing is a huge one. The score, the music, we all know John Williams is, I mean, this is music that I just straight up can just listen to. Like, as a small child, I had the Star Wars CDs, and they were like some of the first CDs I owned. Just listening to the score. I was a child. Yeah. Like, there were no words to this music. I didn't even care. I just loved it.
Yeah, it was the only soundtrack, only orchestral soundtrack you were ever going to listen to as a child.
And even today, when I put it on my phone, and I listen, and my wife is like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "This is what happens at this moment in the movie, at this part of the song." Like, that's how many times I've seen these movies.
Radio play.
It is so amazing. And then the other thing outside of like Luke's journey and the score and the pacing, I think for me is, this is not in the show notes, but I've actually changed my thoughts on this. This story is really a story of forgiveness. I think that you have in a lot of different ways. You have Vader forgiving himself and doing what's right, even though it's, what's the point at this point, right? Like, what does he gain by doing that? You have Luke forgiving Vader. You have Leia forgiving. I mean, I don't know that Leia forgives Vader, but you have her forgiving Han. You have her forgiving. I don't know. I think she does forgive Vader, like, in her heart, and is like trying to do that. You have, I think, in a lot of ways, you have Obi-Wan forgiving Vader. You have Yoda forgiving Obi-Wan. Like, there's a lot of. I don't know that I realized that until just this moment, but like, there's a lot of people that need to be like,
I done wrong.
Like, they need to. You have Yoda needs to forgive himself. Obi-Wan needs to forgive himself. Obi-Wan needs to forgive Anakin, and like, in order to forgive himself. There's a lot of that in this trilogy that, if you don't have the full context, doesn't make sense. But actually, retroactively looking back on it, it's like, these people are traumatized.
Isn't it fascinating, though, that like one of the things that's so beautiful about these films is that within it, right? And sure, George Lucas was around to like give context on all these things and build them out, right? Like, but like, there are just so many things that have like real content has been made out of over the years, that like the seed of that idea is just a random piece of dialogue said by some extremely boring official on a Death Star in A New Hope. It's amazing how much, whether or not the backstory is fleshed out at the time, it is like how much bones of a backstory exists to this overall story, because it's presented as this whole thing, but there's this huge before context. There's a lot of things happening around all of it that we've since learned about, or happened between different movies that we've gotten to see as the stories. But like, so much of it gets talked about at a different time during this trilogy. And then content creators, including George Lucas, right, have just gone back and said, okay, let's take this throwaway line and let's try and build an entire television show out of it.
I think that you talk about just that first film, right? Like the Clone Wars, is something
Often
that
spies. Like,
oh
there's so
man,
many.
yeah, it's Both and Spice. Uh, there's a lot. There's a lot of. Wait, no, that's not that movie.
You're right, not the Bothan spies. Sorry, just the spies in general.
You just got me so good. I was like, wait a second. There's not a movie about Both and Spice.
No, not the Bothan spies. The other spies.
Yeah.
For Rogue One. Yeah.
It's okay. There's a lot of Death Stars in Star Wars. It can get confusing. But I think my point is that what I had originally written down is for this was kind of a joke that I was going to make about this being a family affair. And while that's true, right? Like you have a lot of things going on with that have family ties, but at the root of it, it is a story of forgiveness, and maybe something that I think that I could learn from that I didn't realize until just recording this podcast. And then the last thing I want to say is just lightsabers. I want to know how many dollars and human consciousness has been spent on trying to actually create a lightsaber because of George Lucas.
Is there anything cooler?
It's just the coolest thing. Like, I just don't understand how he created something so cool. It's so funny too, because I'm sure that it's not the first laser sword. There's no way, right?
So Dune has like knives that are in that sort of area. I honestly think he might have taken it to a next level.
And that movie, I actually don't know. I don't know my sci-fi fantasy well enough to know if this is literally the first laser sword, but dang, did he do it well.
Definitely the first one that we all saw.
Yeah, it's definitely the first one I saw.
And it's cooler seen than it is thought about, or written about, so
it's the sound.
Matter.
It's the... It's so cool.
Okay, so, my God, what an incredible sound design in general, right? Like, not just the scoring, but like the design of the individual sounds, right? We talked about the TIE Fighter sound. That's my favorite sound in the Star Wars universe, is that. Like, it's like whenever a new Star Wars things comes out and people are like, oh, are you going to enjoy it? What are you going to think about it? Like, what are your expectations? I'm like, man, if it just has a TIE Fighter zooming across the screen, I'm going to be happy. That's all I need.
Yeah, I agree the TIE Fighter's cool. I don't know how this is going to sound in editing, but I had to grab it just to like... That one right there, that one's cool, but the end,
oh man, I just started thinking about the first scene where the lightsaber is used, and I don't want to talk about that scene. What happened is my brain immediately jumped to Bushes of Love.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, this is the bad lip reading songs, and it's like a song off of like lip reading of things that Obi-Wan says in the movie.
Oh.
And it's,
I actually think I have seen this. I mean,
and it's actually like a legitimately good song is the scary part, but it's such a meme. However, I agree that like the sounds of Star Wars, both the music and the individual things, are like so iconic. They're totally like like they are the stuff of like, kids staring off into space and they just start making noise in the middle of class and everyone else is quiet. Like they are, I mean, that was me, but I don't think it was just me. That's the good part, is like I can take a lot of solace in knowing that I'm not the only person who would just, occasionally just start humming Darth Vader's tune during the middle of class or whatever.
So what about you outside of the sound? Like, what's your other high level thoughts on Star Wars?
Oh man. I don't think I realized this at first, but so much of the world building in A New Hope is talking about the politics of the galaxy and of the Empire, which I think is really interesting, because so many names are said and not given context to, and so much is just going on with that like there is stuff there. and like, but it doesn't make sense at first. But it's like sent there to be like, oh, this is much bigger than what we've seen so far, right? Like there's a whole galaxy of stuff here.
It almost feels like you have to understand the collapse of the Roman Empire to understand. Like, we were kids, right? We had no idea what it meant that the Republic had been wiped. Like, there was no more Republic. It was just an empire now.
We're about to do away with the Senate, etc.,
Yeah,
etc.
like, what? I don't know what a Senate is. Like, I don't care. Show me laser beams.
Uh-huh. But like those are scenes that like I go back to and watching A New Hope, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's part of it. I really like how when I think of like what a story should have, like what a Star Wars movie has, I think Empire is just like the script of it, right? Like we need to have we need to have a real lightsaber fight. We need to have exploring alien terrain. We need to have spaceship drama. We need to have
A planet that is only one material type.
only one biome. Yeah, only one biome per planet because we can't have complexity here. Because it's actually hard to do settings in space opera if you don't do that. It's actually crazy that Naboo has more than one setting. It's the first planet ever. Are you hearing dog?
No, it's not the dog. I mean, I did hear the dog. Good puppy. But do we know if Bespin is just gas?
Ooh, I don't think we know it, but we haven't.
You would think that's something I would know, but I don't know. I don't know.
We have no proof that it's anything else.
Now,
I think it's like a gas giant for mining, right?
Yeah, I mean, they are mining gas on it, so that makes sense.
But it's I like. There's a lot of worlds, like right, like Empire Strikes Back is the classic expand the setting movie.
It's so funny too. We should talk about this now because we might not get back into it, and it is something I wanted to cover on the show. Let's actually go into our next segment because I think it will cover what I want to talk about. And what I'd like us both to do is just say what our favorite in the trilogy is, and then I'll dive into something that I believe about Star Wars. So what is your favorite in this trilogy?
I don't believe I've been even a little bit opaque on it so far. It's Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, and mine is actually Return of the Jedi. And it's funny, too, because I don't remember if it was my wife or my brother. Maybe it was you. Somebody the other day, when they heard that, I think it might have been you. But when they heard that Return was my favorite Star Wars movie, but I thought that Rogue One was the best Star Wars movie, they were really impressed. They're like, a lot of people can't separate things they love from objective, right? And Return will just always be my favorite. I don't even know that I have a question about that. And I think for a lot of people, Empire's their favorite is because it's so objectively good. Like, it is. And for me, I like the ending of stories. I like that. I also like Ewoks. I think it has the best lightsaber battle of the originals. But I also like that finality and that feeling of finishing it, where a lot of people really like bridges. Like, they really like the bridge stories. They really like the character building that happens there, the question marks, which is funny because, like, Eldest is my favorite Aragon book by, like, a substantial margin. It's just my favorite book of all time.
There's a fantastic comparison to the end of Eldest and the beginning of Risinger with the end of Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, I mean, it's
the beginning of Return of the Jedi.
I say this all the time.
We know this. Yes. The
I say this all
movies are just Star Wars.
Yeah, the Aragon books are just the best written Star Wars novels. That's just factual. But I do think that there's something to be said about if you like bridge stories, Empire's just likely in your top, like, 15 favorite movies, hands down, easily. And I think that's true for a lot of people. I think that I said character building is really important. I said, the setting, the setup, and the problems that have to be presented for you to overcome during those trials. I think it all equates to just a lot of people's favorite movies.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the job that Empire Strikes Back has to do is it has to take us from this absolute victory and create or like, this incredible victory, right, and create all of the backdrop for conflict again. It has to then portray that time has passed so that we can get back there and things are still going on and we're used to this life and this is our life now.
Yeah, it does it so well too. Like if you think about Hoth, right? Just the attack on Hoth and the absolute just like you got these little snow speeders trying to take down. It sets up that same kind of feeling that the Death Star. Like, how are we going to destroy the Death Star with these little X-wings? And it does the same thing with the snow speeders. Like, and they take down some AT-ATs. I will never call them AT-ATs. Don't at me. I'm not doing it.
Rat-ATA. Call it that, everyone.
But the thing is you have this just what feels like an almost obliteration, right? Like the rebels lose to start that movie. Sort
of, yes, I agree. I think that
they escape, which is their goal, but that's because they can't win.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's always the rebels' goal, right? Like, there's always another Death Star. The rebels are always just trying to survive another day.
Yeah.
Totally. And there's so much discussion. Again, like the first 20 minutes of both of those movies, of both A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, sets up a lot of backstory, sets up a lot of just ideas around what's going to happen next, tells you a lot about where the characters are at in their relationship, right? Han Solo and Leia fighting all the way through the tunnels as they're escaping. Granted, this is probably 40 minutes into the movie at this point, not 20 minutes, but it feels like it's the opening.
Yeah.
Like, adds so much to the context of the movie, right? Like, they're having this fight, and then Chewie's, like, working on it and unhappy. Like, there's so much going on there. And then there's just this like chase over like an asteroid field, and all of that has such a cool sort of experience to it. And it's a really good example of when like the technology that you're expecting to work has a big play in how the story unfolds from there. It's always really cool.
And I think for me, with Return, I think that there's so much. I love seeing the payoff, right? I love Empire Strikes Back, but there's a lot of payoff in Return.
Yeah.
I mean, you know that Luke lost his lightsaber, so just that first flick of Luke's lightsaber, and then also just being a new color for me was like, oh man. So cool.
New color just dropped, everyone.
Yeah, let's go.
It's the third lightsaber color in the whole series.
It's, well, it depends on when you saw the first one. Because there was no color to the lightsabers originally.
True. That said, it would still be the third color introduced to the series.
Sure, that's fair. It's not just absence of color.
Yes.
Or that's not true. I guess
the awkward part for me, of course, having watched Attack of the Clones first, is there was an infinite number of lightsaber colors available to me right out of the bat. Old Mace Windu's purple. The only one we hadn't seen yet.
I don't know that we
gray Jedi ones.
I was gonna say I don't know that we saw yellow or orange actually in. I know that in like the novelizations of Attack of the Clones, one of the Jedis on Geonosis actually has an orange lightsaber. But I don't know if it's actually in the scene. Sorry, I'm just...
How come we've never seen a television show of the years between A New Hope and Return of the Jedi? I mean, Empire Strikes Back. Like, I feel like there could be a great... In like that 5-year scene, there could be a great TV show.
So there actually is a book. It's called Heir to the Jedi. That follows...
Pre-canon?
No, this is a new book. I actually own it digitally. I haven't finished it yet. But there actually is a book that is canon of Luke between those times. So, fun fact.
Cool.
But yeah, for me, Return did so much. You know, the payoffs, the Jabba's palace was just... it was so cool.
Great tension to that whole everything. And there's a lot of starting where we began, right? The two droids on their own on Tatooine is a fantastic callback to where we started.
Just really good homage. The Return does so many things right. I get it. I get that it's a little cheesier, a little more fun than some of the other Star Wars films. But like, I was a kid when I watched Star Wars. Star Wars is for children.
There's a great XKCD joke about how much people like Return of the Jedi, and it's relative to the age they first watched it, being that were they young enough that Ewoks were fun by their standards, or were they old enough that Ewoks were stupid by their standards?
I think that was stolen from How I Met Your Mother, but I'm not sure.
I find it very hard to believe that How I Met Your Mother was creating jokes instead of XKCD, because How I Met Your Mother was also excellent at stealing jokes.
Sure, that's fair. That's fair. I'm talking crap on one of my favorite comedies. Let's go on. We talked about our favorite film. I talked about my belief that like it depends on if you like bridge films or if you like. And you also covered the last part, which is age. I was a youngin' when I saw this. Let's talk about favorite characters. I'm gonna go first. As a child, I wanted to be Luke Skywalker. It's all I wanted in the world. I thought Luke Skywalker was the coolest thing to ever exist. But as an adult, I can't stand Luke Skywalker in the first two films. And as such, I think that as an adult, my favorite characters are Leia and Darth Vader. Specifically Leia and Anakin, for what it's worth. I think that... I think it's both, but Leia is such an interesting character. I was on my Facebook memories a couple days ago. There are people that really felt like Star Wars was trying to force feed them strong female characters. They're like, in this galaxy we haven't had this before, and blah blah blah. It was like, you obviously didn't watch Star Wars. Like, within 37 seconds of Leia getting captured, she takes the lead, blows up the door, and throws them down a garbage vent.
Well, I was gonna say, absolutely none of Leia's scenes in A New Hope is she anything less than like demanding to see the manager. Like, she is absolutely fed up from like.
I don't even think she's demanding to see the manager. I think she's.
No. She's just like you can't do this. I have accomplished my goal. Do whatever you want with me. Right, is a huge part of it. I've gotten the data out. I will not go down. I will stand up for this. And once rescued, God, what an incompetent rescue! Like, it's so interesting.
I saw a TikTok the other day that was talking about her specifically, and it said that Luke is Padme's child. Like, Luke has a lot of Padme in him, where he is kind, reserved. The parts that he got from Anakin are the annoying parts, right? Like the whininess, the
growing up on Tatooine part.
Yeah, maybe you just are naturally whiny when you grow up on Tatooine.
You would be too.
But what Leia got from Anakin was like the drive and the anger.
Nobody asked me.
Yeah, exactly.
I solved the problems while no one was looking.
Yeah, she has all of the best parts of Anakin.
Yeah,
and
in fact, it's actually wild how often Anakin and Leia are both like in any given scene, like ignoring the front of the scene.
Oh, exactly.
And just like solving a problem in the background.
Yeah, they're just
actually incredible.
Yeah, I think that she is like straight up. It's no wonder her kid's the one that turns. No, I'm just.
And they have immediate chemistry on screen together.
It's true.
They actually have more scenes together, I think, in that movie than Luke has with his father in Return of the Jedi.
No, because it's
close.
I don't know. Either way, Leia reminds me, and this could be like biased because I've seen the whole thing right now. I've seen all 9 films, but Leia is Anakin. Like, she is, and it's so funny too because, at the end of Return we get that, even if he fails, there's another one, and also like I think that I don't know, Leia was just a awesome character. I love her wit. I love her. She's just great. And the other one is Vader, and Vader is so good in these films for a few reasons. And it's so funny too because to watch the original Vader voice in A New Hope and then to like realize what was brought by bringing James Earl Jones in, it changes the whole character. It really does. And I love. I love Darth Vader. He is my kid, for what it's worth, has seen up until the point. He's seen all of A New Hope. My 4-year-old has seen all of A New Hope, and he is not allowed to watch past a certain point in Empire Strikes Back. You can all guess when. He has not seen it. He doesn't know. He has no idea. And and that's so that I can save that moment for him. But he is just captivated by Darth Vader. To him, Darth Vader is the scariest thing.
Oh yeah.
And for me as a kid, just the first time he walks in and just throwing people around with force chokes and
yeah. It's a shame that the all-time best Darth Vader is scary scene isn't until 30 years later, 35 years later.
Oh, but man, what the ultimate payoff if you're like a Star Wars fan.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's so good, all the same.
I actually have a theory that you're supposed to watch Rogue One first. The very first Star Wars movie should...
There is not a scene that should happen between the end of Rogue One and the start of A New Hope. It should just be called Rogue 2.
I actually believe that the Rogue One, you should, if you've never watched Star Wars, watch Rogue One first. I think you were the one that said that you agreed with me there, that it has kind of like all the tropes and stuff.
I just don't even think that it's really negotiable. It's actually it's such when I've watched Rogue One for the first time, all I wanted to do
was watch A New Hope. You were like, let's go, let's watch all of Star Wars now.
It's amazing though. Darth Vader really drops off as a character in those 20 minutes.
It's funny. But yeah, I think that Vader's redemption, even as a kid, it was something that kind of hit me. I actually remember the first time that I saw him take off Vader's mask, and I was so sad. And Vader, the respect that he showed to Vader, it always hit home for me that it was Luke forgiving him and respecting him, and Luke throwing away his lightsaber. The whole story, the whole thing with Vader, you just... I don't know if it's the music. It's so amazing how much you can do with a guy that has a mask on, for what it's worth.
I think it's actually how much better it is because he has the mask on. Think about how, obviously we're talking about the original trilogy, but think about how wildly cool Kylo Ren is until he takes off his mask in Force Awakens.
I don't know.
I don't think that Kylo Ren is bad after that point, but I do think a lot of the scary value of Kylo Ren goes down after I see Adam Driver's face.
Maybe. I don't. It's not the scariness that I was talking about, though, right? It's the pain he is feeling watching the Empire or the Emperor shock Luke. It's sad. It is. You really, and I think that Luke does a good job. This is also why Luke is my favorite in Return, by the way. Is his conversation, his dialogue with Vader makes the most sense. I don't know. Anyway, that being said, those are my favorite characters. I also almost said one of yours, so I want you to...
So, I chose both R2 and C-3PO, not because I think that I love C-3PO in a vacuum, but because R2 isn't a character without C-3PO. And R2 is my favorite Star Wars character by quite a considerable margin.
Also, I had a fan theory up until Force Awakens came out that R2-D2 was the main character of Star Wars.
I like it. Force Awakens, of course, undermines that whole idea.
Right. It's very upsetting, but that was my original... That was my headcanon.
No, I like it. R2-D2 has way more... I mean, I think only Chewie, I guess... Chewie and R2 are basically tied for their continuity in the Star Wars universe at this stage. But R2 and C-3PO just have this instant chemistry from the beginning of when they interact. The fact that C-3PO's own inhuman robotic behavior becomes so much more human because of his frustration with R2 all the time actually really does a lot to drive C-3PO as a character. And the fact that I can know exactly what R2 is saying only by C-3PO's responses
No,
is so good.
and it's not just you. We watched A New Hope for Star Wars Day this year. We always try and watch a Star Wars movie as a family on May the 4th. Last year we watched. Well, last year Maxwell saw A New Hope and then watched up until the point that I let him watch of Empire. And this year I was like, let's watch A New Hope. Like, let's just do it. You can watch it with us. And he got all the jokes. Like, he understood what R2 was doing. He was asking questions, but he got the jokes, and he understood the relationship there, and he was laughing. So
it's actually funny because R2 is trained to do Anakin things in the same way Leia just instinctively knows how to do it, of like, go walk in the background and solve the problem. I have my own priorities. Nothing bothers me, right? Like, that's R2's MO from like the moment he starts interacting with Anakin. Did I just connect something there?
No, I was reading what you added to the show notes.
Oh, sure. And they're just like a wildly good time together for this. I think it's like just a like very solid. I mean, in a sense, they're the narrators of the film, not in that they're like telling what's happened, but like they're like these passive observers the whole time that are like.
Is R2 passive?
No, R2 is very active.
Okay,
no,
I was going to say C-3PO's passive. He's miserable.
And yeah. I mean, R2 is not passive in his role in the plot, but he is passive in his role as his like inability to comment, right? Like, very passive in terms of that, right? He can only comment through the lens of a passive character.
Yeah, I think that you putting them together is great because I think their relationship was really important.
Yeah. I mean, R2 is so flat in like the parts of the first of the prequels that like C-3PO is not around. He's cool. He does things, and he can like Anakin can talk with him, but like he's not at his best when he doesn't.
I love the Anakin R2 relationship just as much.
It's a good one.
So I don't know. Maybe I'm biased. Let's go on to wrap up. We're in the final stretch here. We got one last segment before Could Be Betters and Lovitz. I want to talk about favorite storylines.
Yeah.
My favorite storyline in the whole thing is Han and Leia. And there's some personal reasons. I think that I was willing to show affection towards my wife before she was willing to show affection towards me. It's pretty common when early in our relationship it's funny too because like my wife said I love you first, but after that every time I would say I love you for like quite a while she would say I know. And the thing is that the thing I like about Han and Leia is that Leia forces Han to improve. And I think that his improvement, I mean, you see it at the end, right? Like when she talks about how she loves Luke, and he is just backs up. He's like, you know what? Okay, I get it. It's fine. That was not the Han you would have seen 2 movies ago.
It's not the Han that you saw 2 movies ago,
right,
making all of these like dumb, cheesy one-liners. I mean, Empire is really the one that's full of them, right? Like, I think that they're too busy in most scenes of A New Hope to really like let Han run away with his mouth. But like, man, just every time they like run into a corner on the Millennium Falcon, like I can't, like, those are some of the harder scenes for me to watch in Star Wars, but they do get to a really good place.
I think that, I don't know, as somebody that was raised in a really, I was raised to believe like that men are in charge and that women are underneath them. Mm-hmm. And so for me it was a, I don't know, it was
subversive enough for you?
Yeah, I think that the thing is that I, as an adult, like, I love Leia too, and I realized in relationships that, one of the goals in any relationship, it doesn't matter who you are or how you identify in your gender or what part of the relationship that you identify as is that the partner that you have is supposed to help you improve. Your job together is to bring out the best in each other and be the person the other can lean on to get through hard times and to improve. And Han and Leia just do that for each other. Like, Leia is, it's so funny to say this, but she is like so stubborn, and the fact that she gets her walls broken down by somebody like Han, I think, is important.
Yeah, I actually this is interesting because the way we're talking about it now is actually changing one of my could it be betters a little bit because I'm starting to walk it back because the thing, like the traits that like Leia is growing towards in Star Wars, which is like actually towards tenderness, towards patience, towards openness to letting other people be in charge, look a lot like what in any other setting, any other character would be the flat one-dimensional like women we would expect in movies. And you know, Star Wars fails the Bechdel test. Like they were
really hard,
up and down,
really hard,
right? Like, but Leia as the singular female character in the show of any real stature is not one-dimensional in any way, and has an interesting point because the values to which she's growing to are the ones that we expect most women to start with.
Yeah, and the thing is like that moment where she tells Han she loves him, right? That in a lot of ways feel like, oh, finally, like she's breaking down. I don't know how to say this, but like that's not what's happening. It's that she is coming to terms with the fact that like, okay, like
she's not happy about it, but
she loves him, and I think that too often we expect, like, she doesn't love him because he's a sleazebag. She loves him because deep down he's like a huge softie and she knows that. She sees it. Like the moment where he gets tortured and doesn't give up anyone, he's obviously not really a sleazebag. It is a facade that he puts on that she sees through, and she's trying to bring out that softie, right? And the same is true of Han, where he's like, you're not all that you are acting like, right? Like you're not all tactful.
General,
yeah, you're well, not only that, but like let's be real about being a princess. Like that, whatever a princess is supposed to be according to this universe, she is not. Like no. She's a fighter. She's a winner. She's a hard ass. Sorry for those. We don't usually swear on the show, but like
deserved.
I just think that they bring the better parts of each other out. And it's my favorite storyline by like a lot in in this. So,
yeah.
What about you?
Oh, I love this arc of a journey that the Millennium Falcon takes everyone on. Right, like it is the singular setting of this trilogy that has any continuity, but it has a character, right? And sure, that character is like actually personified and given a backstory in Solo.
That's so funny.
But the ship has that character off the bat, right? Like, from the moment, I mean, I guess this isn't until Empire Strikes Back, but like, C-3PO is like literally go plug in with the ship computer and see what the heck is, what her problem is, right? Like to C-3PO, I think is a really great scene that helps personify the ship. And, granted, I think most of the like variation that the Millennium Falcon has and like the intrigue of that ship is in Empire Strikes Back, which is my favorite story, and so that's a big part of it. But I mean, the Millennium Falcon goes from being this like we're flying in this bucket of bolts, right? Like this, and then Han is having to talk it up to like no questions, hands down. At the end of the trilogy, the Millennium Falcon is the best ship in the fleet.
Yeah, and it's so funny too, right? Like, we don't know anything about, like, you're the viewer, right? You sit down, you watch a Star Wars movie, they see it, they're upset, Why are they upset? Like, I don't know what a ship looks like in this universe.
Obi-Wan hasn't been on a ship since hasn't been on a spacecraft of any kind since the good old days, right? He doesn't know anything about what it's like these days, and like Luke's not trustworthy, right? Like he doesn't know anything about ships either.
Yeah,
but Han is the one that's characterized as the untrustworthy guy there, right? So like him saying, "No, the ship's great, everyone, believe me," makes sense after like only so much understanding of this that's come out later. And it's so hard to like take our understanding of the series now as like the intent it was given back in the 80s as opposed to what we know of it now. But it's really interesting.
Yeah. I made a joke earlier and that I want to give some context to, just for your love for YT freighters. But it's pretty funny too. For context for those who don't know, why it's so funny that it's this is just like a freighter ship. Like this is just a cargo ship that's been modded the heck out of.
Yeah.
And like this is just it would be like seeing a semi truck on the road.
Yeah, like, it's a semi truck that's actually Optimus Prime, right?
Yeah,
is what it really is.
So it's so funny that this YT freighter is like, one of the greatest ships in the galaxy.
Yeah. I don't think that the Millennium Falcon has really lived its arc until, in the new trilogy when Finn says, "Oh man, they hate that ship." Like, that's when it really has lived up to its full idea.
Let's go on to our could be betters. Wes, I'm gonna let you go first.
Oh sure. I think that like so much of what like. I think could be better in this series is I think we could have used a little bit less of new age sound effects and visual effects in modern editions. I think we should actually appreciate these films as how they once looked and sounded, because I think that we're not actually doing ourselves like I don't think that like the partying on Naboo after the Death Star is destroyed for the second time or whatever actually enhances the film in any way. And I wish we didn't give Harrison Ford the credit to say like cheesy lines that aren't as good as the rest of the dialogue, because when it comes out of Harrison Ford's mouth, it is considered gold, and when it comes out of Hayden Christensen's mouth, it's considered the worst thing we've ever heard.
Oh man, I love both your could be betters, and I want to talk about them really quick. One, if anyone criticized the original trilogy the way they criticized either the prequels or the sequels, these films would be garbage. Nobody would like them. The internet would explode. And well, that's one of the reasons. Two, I agree with you. We shouldn't remake the original trilogy. Just straight up just remake it. And just... I agree. I think mixing... There's tons of enhancements that could be made. Like...
Okay, if we're remaking the original trilogy, Spencer, who are you casting?
I'm casting the person that played Han Solo, and Solo is Han Solo.
Okay, he was good enough to stay. Same, I guess.
Sebastian Stan as
Donald Glover as.
Yeah, I'm Donald. Yeah, I'm doing the whole thing. I'm casting Sebastian Stan as Mark Hamill, or as Luke Skywalker. That's so funny.
Who's your Carrie Fisher then?
That one's a little bit harder for me. But I would actually cast Haley Steinfeld.
I like it. For what it's worth, if Haley Steinfeld is Leia in Star Wars, does her song "Most Girls" just make it into the soundtrack?
That would be dope. I would cast Haley Steinfeld. I think that she would be the person I would cast as Leia.
Cool.
The problem is her age difference with Sebastian Stan. So like maybe you have to go a little bit younger than Sebastian to like redo this movie. That's a hard question.
Would you bet on James Earl Jones surviving long enough to finish?
Yes. I would cast James Earl Jones as Darth Vader's voice.
You just write the whole thing and have him.
I would do it today.
In one sitting.
Like
yeah.
Like
don't
Disney.
Don't waste any time.
Disney, just go do it.
You should just have hopefully they do. They just have a vault of James Earl Jones dialogue.
I would also, for what it's worth, I would cast Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. So come on, let's go.
How much older do you think they would make you?
They are the same age right now, for what it's worth.
Right now, today?
Yes.
Excellent. Wild.
They should just do it. End of story. Anyway, I love both your could be betters. I do think that Star Wars is given credit that no other movies get because it's Star Wars, like the original trilogy, and I think it's unfair. I think that we can be better and do better. And
well, it's not that we shouldn't be. It's not that we should be criticizing this series more, right? It's that we should be giving more credit to the silly space opera.
Exactly.
Of today.
It's a popcorn flick. Come on. But yeah, I'll go next. My could be betters are. Oh man, I scrolled too far. Oh yeah, it's just Luke whining. Luke is there. It's the same one you had, right? If like people hate Hayden Christensen so much, he's not even 1/10, not even 1/100th as annoying as Mark Hamill is in A New Hope. Mark Hamill is the most.
Mark Hamill sponsor our podcast.
What?
Mark Hamill sponsor our podcast.
I love Mark Hamill. I love him. Mark will tell you the same thing.
Oh yeah.
He does. A New Hope is almost. Never mind. I don't want to say that. A New Hope is rough sometimes, and it is entirely because of Luke Skywalker for me now. And you know what? That's fine. I think that
it is odd that somehow, in retrospect, C-3PO is not the whiniest character.
It's so weird. The thing is that that George Lucas has a problem with writing dialogue. It's just how it is. Most of the great dialogue is ad-libbed by Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford, and that's okay. I forgive George Lucas for that flaw because of the greatness that he has brought and the happiness that he has brought me in my life. But dude, that could be better for me. It is rough. It is some rough dialogue.
Yeah, that's fair.
Let's do Lovitz really quick. I'll just blast mine off. We already talked about the score. We already talked about lightsabers. We already talked about the sound effects. We didn't talk about set design. Other than a specific scene where the Millennium Falcon looks like it's painted on or as a backdrop in Return of the Jedi, the set design in this is really, really, really good for the original trilogy. I already mentioned Jabba's palace. It is just one of the coolest opening however many minutes of any movie I've ever watched. Same with Hoth. They're just both great. And then Ewoks. I actually love Ewoks. I love these little teddy bears, destroying these stormtroopers.
Is the opening shot of Return of the Jedi spaceship to planet view?
I can't believe I didn't remember this when you asked the question, and for editing reasons, I'm just going to be clear that I forgot this. But it is literally the Emperor landing on the Death Star. I actually didn't watch the scene for what it's worth. I didn't watch it, but once I saw the Star Destroyer coming in, it is a Star Destroyer coming to the new Death Star and the Emperor getting off.
Oh yeah, that's a wildly good way to set it. The beginnings of these films are all incredible. Right? I would say that the slowest is Empire Strikes Back.
How did we not talk about the crawl, by the way?
We're going to. It's here. It's in the notes.
Oh yeah. So should we go on to your Lovitz?
Oh sure. I've already talked about my love of TIE fighters. I think they're just the coolest spaceships in all of Star Wars. They have the best sound. I love the alien costuming, in the little elephant dude, the Mos Eisley Cantina players. There's just so many excellent random throwaway aliens that get built off later. I really love how it feels to sit down in a Star Wars movie, have in the theater, to have it go dark, and then all of a sudden, big huge score, episode title, and then we just get all this exposition. It's such an efficient way to set the scene, and it's iconic.
Oh yeah, I mean that's one of Maxwell's favorite part of the movie is just hearing that story before the movie. It's so amazing.
You have to read it aloud to him.
Oh yeah, every time.
It's so good. Yeah,
it's so good.
Also, it's wild that like it uses like a way of speaking that's never used once in the rest of the entire like movie, right? It's always this like
Oh,
bland
you have to,
historic.
you have to read it in like in a very
Yes.
I've got a voice I read it in.
Yeah, I bet. I love how in like this part of Star Wars, the Force is this like limited supply. Like when Yoda lifts the X-wing out of the bog, right? It's such this like momentous scene, even though like as we see later, is chump change Force tactics in later bits, or Darth Vader like throwing pieces of equipment at Luke as like a distraction, right? These are all like just such like minor uses of the Force as we know it today, but they're so momentous back then. Or granted, all my references are going to be from Empire Strikes Back because that's the one that's clearest in my mind.
Sure.
But like right, like in A New Hope, Luke's just at like using the Force to sense, right?
Yeah.
Like I think it's such a cool like level of growth we have to still not be that much more advanced with the Force, right? We get like the Force jump plus the grab my lightsaber is the cool opening moment of like Force stuff in Return, and it's so fun to see that growth happen.
So that's gonna do it. Those are our Lovets. And the thing about Could Be Betters and Lovets that I really love about what we do on this podcast, for what it's worth, that I always mean to mention, is that Could Be Betters are not. We're not trying to nitpick. We're not trying to tear this thing down. It's like, you know what, I think this could have been better, and it's about being better and improving, and it's a rational criticism, and we don't. It doesn't ruin it. These are not things that ruin things for us, because I don't think we're ever going to ruin something. We're never going to.
Anything that's ruined for us, we're not reviewing, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I want to rate the films individually rapidly. So you just no explanations allowed. Give me your ratings for each film.
3, 4.5, 4.5.
Okay, we're really close here because I'm going 3, 5, 5. So, with that being said, now we can get into it. Let's rate the entire story. And I would give Star Wars the original trilogy a 4.5.
Yeah, A New Hope is just the first 60 pages of any book. Like, kind of slow at first, hard to get up to, and once it's getting going, it's like pretty good, right? Like we had to like get on the Death Star before things really got going.
Yeah. For what it's worth, there were years I don't believe this anymore, where I said A New Hope is the worst Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And there are reasons for that. I think that between most of it has the worst acting. I think that it has some of the best pacing and some of the best score. So like it's gone up for me, but it can be, it's rough around the edges, and it certainly takes this entire trilogy away from being a 5.
Yeah, it probably is the thing that snatches it out from under the rug. I mean, like, I don't know how to like rank, like talking about a whole trilogy in terms of rating is interesting because like, so much of like rating things is your comparison points, right? Like the things I would be comparing it to are like Lord of the Rings, the other Star Wars trilogies, like
I mean, I think
the Godfather trilogy.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would think of like Godfather. In all honesty, the way that I view the Harry Potter films is the first 3 and the next 4, or I guess the next 5 because of those. But
for what it's worth, this one is the shortest of any of those.
Yeah.
And gets way more storytelling done than some of them.
I'm saying that the pacing of the original Star Wars trilogy is unreal. It's so good.
Do you think that if you put in Rogue One and grouped that together, that bumps it up to a 5 to you?
Oh, it gets pretty close.
Yeah, like it's still just like, and then I took a nap in the second quarter.
Yeah, it gets pretty close.
What if it's just like Luke isn't a character until we get to Empire Strikes Back?
The thing is I don't want to get too far into this. Luke is beloved by many people. I love Mark Hamill, and I think that there's the second he is on the X-wing, fighting, destroying that Death Star, Luke becomes just amazing.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to take that moment away because I think it's just one of the greatest moments.
I don't know. I think Mark Hamill should really stick to voicing cartoon villains. I think that's really a strong suit.
That certainly is one of his strong suits. To wrap up, I just want to mention that it is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I just want to dedicate this podcast to the person I mentioned earlier, Caleb Case. Love you a lot, buddy. I lost Caleb to suicide a few years back, and if there are lots of options out there, if you are struggling with your mental health right now, it's been a really, really hard year, and the people care. Like there are people that care about you. I just wanted to say that on this week's show. Carrie Fisher was a huge advocate for mental health, and I would not have been able to do this episode without mentioning that. And I just want to say that really quick. You can find me at Spencer H. You can find West at East_monotone. You can find the podcast at Need to Nerd Pod on Twitter. You can like, subscribe, check out the Patreon. But the best thing you can do, if you don't want to give us that dollar we talked about earlier, is leave us a review. It is the easiest and best way to support the show. Puts us into all the right algorithms along with those likes and subs on YouTube.
But don't use our algorithm for ratings when you rate us, though, because we don't give enough fives on our show. So
If you think we're a 4, I'll take it. It's okay. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and may the Force be with you.
Do 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 do.
Love it.